coming out the jacket, cause we're turning up the heat. I wanna see you clapping when you get about your seat. It's time to make it happen when we hit these streets. I'm coming in hot and I can't be beat. Watch out now. Everybody watch out. Watch out.
Welcome everybody. Episode 53. Say hi to James Harper, 28B. Say hi, James.
Hi, James.
We're doing so a few thank yous before we start today. Firstly, the forecasts are sponsors. They run the market leading project management software. Wouldn't be possible without their support to run this in the way that we do. And also thank you to Caitlin in the background as well for making everything happen. So I think we should just crack on now. Now we're live all of a sudden. So James, welcome again.
Thank you.
You wanted to start by giving us a little bit of a background about what 28B does.
28B. Okay, 28B inspires brand teams in the pharmaceutical sector and the agencies they work with to do better with a platform called Viva. It's all about empowering and enabling the reps out in the field that are seeing doctors. It's a really powerful platform, but it's really underutilized. So we do that by helping the agencies and the brand teams develop really cool tools, like basically interactive brochures, you want to boil it down, but much more than that because they gather data, give customer insights, etc. So we're really hyper niched in both the pharma sector and then this particular technology. And we also consult as well as develop. So we consult and do the development side of things.
Okay. And when did you start 28B?
Okay, a little bit of origin story. So I fell out of university.
Love an origin story, James.
You love an origin. Okay, so I fell out of university with a pure and applied ecology degree, which is not exactly commercially viable, but I could tell the sex of a common house spider from about 6 feet away. I also fell out of university with some debt and a broken down temperamental VW camper van. So I had a science degree and I needed a car and I needed some money. And medical repping is a really good start in that. So I found that's advertised those jobs in the back of the Telegraph on a Thursday. So the first job I applied for, I got, along with a Rover 214i in red, and a starting salary. And I was off seeing GPs and selling drugs. And 28 years later, I'm still in the industry. So I never planned to be here. It was not a childhood. No one has a childhood dream of working in this industry or doing this. You know, it's a collection of decisions and opportunities that have led me here. But so I repped for a while, and then my boss at the time, I ended up as the specialist psychiatry rep in London, and my boss at the time, who's quite famous in our industry, a guy called Rob Wood, went on to found an amazing company called STEM Healthcare. But his wife was starting an agency, and he said, "You know who you need? You need James in your agency." And I'm not sure if he was trying to get rid of me or he genuinely thought I'd add value to the agency, which was called Athena Medical PR. And that's when I started my agency life. We did medical PR and comms and all the rest of it. And after a very long journey in different agencies, I ran a couple of agencies on behalf of people later in my agency career. I actually weirdly ended up back at Athena. Cherry had left, and it was a very ego-led agency. Not ego, that's the wrong phrase. Personality-led agency. Like, she was Athena. And so when she left, an argument over shares with the owners, she set up what I call Liberty. And all the best team went, all the best clients went. You could just see the agency deflating. So I was brought in to try and breathe life into it. And it was a bit more like the orchestra playing on the Titanic. There's almost nothing we could do to really stop the rot there. We tried.
Yeah.
And should I be saying this? Yeah, I'll be saying this. It's gone under now. But one of our main clients,
a legal case.
One of our main clients, one of our best clients, one of the last mega brands out there, was a warfarin replacement called Xarelto. And we were the agency of record. And the client quite rightly said, this is 12 years ago, was like, let's do more digital. What digital can you do? And at the time, Athena was about as digital as an Excel spreadsheet. So we recommended another agency who was digital and shiny and all the rest of it. And that's an agency I quite admire. And the founder, Wayne Page, and an agency called Big Pink, almost forgot the name then. And they came in, and of course, they were shiny and digital. And by the end of the year, they had all of our budget and we had none. And it struck me as crazy that when you had an account like that, you'd introduce a potential competitor just because you didn't do a bit of what they did. So that set the idea that maybe there was room for a specialist digital supplier or partner for agencies. And at the same time, the iPhone 3 had just launched, and I bought one, and I just thought apps were the future of healthcare. Like, I thought that pharma would be all over apps. I thought, right, what about a company that does websites and apps and all things digital for those agencies that need to compete with digitally founded agencies or big networks? And that was the birth of 28B. And it was a relatively protracted and difficult birth, I would say. But that's still largely our positioning, as we support pharmaceutical agencies. We still don't do the creative, the medical writing, etc. We kind of do the consulting and the development bit. And in fact, our first strapline was partners, not competitors, and we still stand by that. And it means we've had loyal agency partners now pretty much from the day we started that are still working with us. That was 11 years ago at the end of this month.
Yeah, and you touched on when you started, describing what 28B does. You touched on a particular piece of software that you focus on, Viva. So you really focused and niched down on that. Was that something you did from the beginning, or was there a journey towards that?
Very much a journey. I like to refer to the first 6 years of 28B as very expensive market research. It's I'm sure a lot of I know a lot of the people in the Agencynomics community, are in the digital space. It's really, really hard to make money just developing websites. If you don't do the content and you don't get that side of things, you're often compared to offshore developers. You're compared to, my nephew can do this, or a freelancer down the road that's got no overheads.
Become highly commoditized in the last few years, I have to say.
Yeah, and we were doing okay. I wasn't, but the company was just about doing okay. But it's probably just about doing okay because I was scraping a salary out of it. It was, not what I thought we needed anyway. And then the other thing I mentioned about apps are really impacting on healthcare, but not from the pharmaceutical companies. It's actually entrepreneurial doctors, app developers themselves that have really taken that and run with it. And also research centers and hospitals. There are some amazingly impactful apps out there that genuinely affect health in a positive way. But the industry didn't know where to put them, didn't understand them. Lawyers didn't like them. We built apps that just as we were about to launch, the lawyers would kick the teeth out of because it was seen as medical advice and all kinds of stuff. And they didn't fund them correctly. And we had a terrible history in the industry. And, I ended up selling the idea of apps more than I sold what 28B did. And so they ended up not being profitable. The websites were always just easily taken away. We weren't sticky. Then in 2015, we got our first Viva build, which is the platform you're referring to. And for the listeners out there and the watchers and the viewers out there, it's kind of like HubSpot, but for the pharmaceutical industry. So think HubSpot in terms of a CRM, but on top of that, there's two other functions, which is digital asset management. So it can feed the CRM, the HubSpot, with content. And then the CRM can play that content through what's called a CLM player. So you can play compliant sales aids, emails, and stuff through that. So we got our first build, and we did it with our own emulator. We didn't sign up to be a partner with Viva. We kind of just hacked the system. Not hacked the system. That's a crappy phrase for anyone in digital. We just got around the having to pay them to work in the platform. I hope they're not listening. It was a long time ago. Anyway, a year later, that same agency.
They're not listening.
Same agency, we paid them enough by now. Same agency came back and said, one of our big clients, AbbVie, at the time was the largest pharmaceutical company in the world. It's now about number 3, I think. They're going from their old system to Viva. And we know you work in it. Can you help us put a proposal together? And we did. And it was cost effective. And we got to move 50% of all of AbbVie's work, because there was another development. They didn't want to put everything in one basket, over. And so for the next sort of 18 months, we churned about £500,000 worth of development with AbbVie and another company called Allergan at the same time. I thought we found it, right? So I was growing the team and I was heads down and I'd taken my eye off the pipeline and the sales and all the rest of it. We were just in this rut of delivery, and then they both left. Not through anything we did. It was a global decision. Both those companies went to Cognizant, which is a giant 300,000 person strong IT service provider. And in the same month, I found out I'd lost 67% of my revenue from two suppliers, right, together. And that was a really hard time as a solo agency owner. It's like I've got to I've got the team to support. What am I doing? And at that time, we were still doing the webs. That's a combination of an app and a website, by the way, called Webs. That's in the trade, know what it is. Webs, we're all into webs. But anyway, I looked back and I had to really think about what we'd just been doing. Was it worthwhile? I actually did that Street Wisdom at that time. You guys have done the Street Wisdom, right? Where you walk the street and ask the question. And I was really asking myself, am I done with this? Like, is there anything left here to pull together? And when I did the figures and did some thinking and asked the street in Street Wisdom, I realized that there was something that I was kind of enjoying, and there was something where we were really good, and that we'd lost that work not because of us, and that was Viva. So the thing about Viva is, and the sales aid that reps use, is a core part of every single marketing strategy where the products are promoted in the UK. So unlike a website or an app, believe it or not websites aren't always part of this in pharma. They were just peripherals, whereas this is core. And I was a rep. I'd spent 6 years carrying the bag, as we call it, seeing doctors. And I had carbon copy paper to report my calls on, with a tiny line like this, a faux leather filofax where I'd write my notes and keep my diary, and paper detail aids. And when I really got looking at Viva, I was like, what if I had this? It's like the coolest selling tool out there. And so we ditched apps, we ditched websites, we rejigged our website, and we just went all in on Viva. And there are other platforms, OCE and all the rest of it, but we had a year and a half more experience than pretty much anyone out there because we'd done this massive growth in AbbVie. And from that day forward, and I should also give full credit to Spencer, I heard Spencer talk at a collection, at a sort of a networking event where a lot of agency owners are. And he inspired me to get off my arse and get out there and join committees and get involved and talk and network. And the combination of having something specific to be an expert in and talk about, combined with having those conversations with anybody and everybody. And I did that for 18 months. I worked my ass off. And that 18 months has just, all of our business has come from that. I'm a bit worried I'm not doing that as much as I should be anymore because I've been so busy. But it's been like the hyper niching for us has been amazing.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I think there's a couple of things I'd take from it. The first thing is that, thinking back into the past, it sounded like you were on this roller coaster of you're selling, then you're delivering, you're selling, and then you're delivering. And at the same time, you were kind of, excuse the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none, really. Yeah. And then you've taken this decision to niche. I mean, what do you think was the biggest turning point for the business? Do you think it was the fact that you realized that you need to be out there all the time, generating business to keep it going and not getting complacent on the clients? Or do you think it was the decision to niche?
It's definitely both. I don't think if we hadn't decided to niche, going out there and saying, I do digital, it just doesn't stick. It doesn't, people don't remember it. I'm one of many. And in fact, I had this difficult conversation, like, we're digital, but we're not an agency. And it was kind of like, but what if it was a difficult, in fact, Spencer challenged me that again when I came up and met him after the talk and I explained.
Always challenging people. I feel really bad.
No, and do you know what? I came away and I said, we'll make it work, Spencer. And I did, but not quite in the same way.
Right? Proved wrong.
Yeah, we've both been proved right. Let's put it that way. I don't think it worked if we continued as just digital for agencies, but this, it just means, so having something to be an expert in. And in fact, I had my motivational mapping done. I don't know if you guys have done that. You might well enjoy it. We did it at one of our team days. And one of my core drivers is being an expert. It's called The Expert. And just being in a brand team meeting, and when it's my domain and it's on Viva and it's on selling effectiveness and how we can empower reps with data, I'm not bullshitting. I'm genuinely not trying at the edge of my knowledge. I'm right in it. And I think that means I can afford to listen more because when it's not my domain, I can listen and hear. I'm not trying to find that gap to get in and express my brilliance. Yeah. And then when it turns to where have a deep expertise and my team, we can really establish ourselves there. So that it's a combination. It gave me something very clear to talk about. But if I hadn't been out there talking about it, then we wouldn't have had that pipeline build, that reputation build. I joined the PM Society Digital Interest Group. Because I thought, get out there, join a group. and I put a bit of effort in there. And the leader of that group is a guy called Colin Williams, who's now a great friend. He turned out to be the head of GSK Viva Channels for Global. Wow. And we did a great project together. And again, I put a bit of effort into this committee, and I now lead that. And I'm now on the exec committee at the PM Society. And it's not just about business opportunities. I learn a huge amount from them and the team there. So that great example.
Is that like a volunteer role? You're supporting a greater good there as well?
Well, it's twofold. Let's be honest. When you join these things, it's twofold, right? It's great for my reputation. I meet really interesting people. Some of them might be business opportunities, and I am actually passionate about the industry. At one point pre-COVID and vaccines, we were second only to estate agents. The industry seen in the public view of trust and all the rest of it, which is really not fair for UK and Europe. We're capped on our profits. We genuinely care, and we do genuinely do good. And in fact, when I chose to be a medical rep, okay, maybe I didn't choose. When I became a medical rep, so I needed money in a car. My dad's actually a GP, a general practitioner, and it was at the time. And I thought, God, that's going to be interesting, because I thought the same thing. It's just people trying to flog drugs, right? So I spoke to him, and I was like, I've joined the dark side, like I'm a medical rep. What do you think? And he said, you know what? I think you got the wrong idea. The reps that I see bring huge value to me as a customer, because I don't have the time to read all the clinical papers and the journals. So they can bring me like a digest. And of course, add a pinch of salt. And if possible, I'll see a rep from a rival brand and I'll make my decision. But there's a genuine medical education service that we perform as an industry. And actually, it's getting more and more and more like that these days. Gone are the golf holidays and the dinners out. Can't do any of that. In fact, we can't even give them a sticky pad anymore. Used to be pens and pads. It's very much more a service-based scientific relationship now, which is really positive.
Yeah, I totally get that. I just want to talk about recruitment for a second, because I think that a lot of the conversations that Spencer and I have been having in board meetings and at events recently have been around the challenges and shortage of just resource generally in the industry at the moment. And given the fact that you've decided to niche, how have you overcome the challenge of recruitment, given that your services are so niche? And I know you put a lot of effort into this as well, personally.
So we've tripled in headcount since March 2020. Having said that, there were only 3 of us back then, so we're only a small outfit, but it's still pretty. I mean, just to take you back to that 2017, October 2017, when we lost 67% of our revenue. That year, we only turned. I'm happy sharing. We made a loss, right? Effectively made a loss after I paid myself, but we only turned £167,000 that year. It was desperate, and the developers left because there was no work. It wasn't not kind of me to make redundancies, so they left because there was no work, and developers love to work on cool stuff. And we're hoping to tip $1 million this year in that time period. And actually, COVID's accelerated us hugely because everyone's moved to remote digital engagement. So yeah, recruitment's been an all-encompassing, constant challenge. Recruiters never really worked for us. It's always seemed, especially at the sort of junior developer level, they were just passing on CVs. Yep. What was the value in that? So we went direct, and we just used the job boards. And sometimes we've had a really good crop of junior developers, and then other times it's been more of a struggle. Right now we're in a bit of a struggle, but the team that we have recruited over that period of time are brilliant. And that's thanks a lot to someone you introduced us to, Teresa, who is our HR consultant now. And she's really helped us refocus how we advertise and all the rest of it. But core to that is our values. And I don't think we'd be where we're at now almost across the board if we hadn't established and live our values. And I have to say, I was a bit cynical about values, a bit like a manifesto, brand manifesto. But my head of ops, Nick, persuaded me to get one done. We got our values. And what was interesting is when the values were developed, they weren't, if you want to be in this space, these are the values you need. Or look at where you want to be. It was actually, what are your current values? And extract them from that. So we really do all live and feel our values, which is be proactive, be authentic, be ambitious, and do it better.
How did you establish those values? Was there a particular process you went down to do it?
Yeah, so Nick, who works now as our head of ops, did used to work at our marketing agency that we used to do our marketing, because we're not big enough to have our own.
So you kind of knew the business and knew a bit anyway.
He'd been working with us for 4.5 years at that point. And he persuaded me to get the manifesto done and extract the values. And I'll tell you an interesting story about it. We worked really hard on them. You could see what they were. And we had one that was it was I can't remember what it was, but it was very similar to the Be Proactive one, and it felt like they overlapped a bit. But I was fine with that. I was really happy with the other three. And then I recruited a client services manager, Sarah, to the business, and within a couple of weeks, she said, "I love your values, but I think you're missing one." She said, "I think you're missing integrity or authenticity, because listening to everyone on the calls internally and with clients is you're incredibly authentic." And again, that's a real value of ours. And just if the solution is not right for the client, but we might make more money at it, it's still the wrong one to do, right? So we'll always point them with the one that's best for them. And in the long term, that comes back in space, the value and trust you build from that. So we've swapped that out, and authentic is in there. So Teresa's helped us weave those through our job adverts, and she'll triage the candidates, of which there are thousands for development, and 99% are not worth it. And we'll interview around those values and pick them out.
Yeah, that's exactly the next question I was going to ask, because it sounds like you built a brilliant culture in quite a short space of time, and remotely as well. I think that's something that you wanted to talk about today, wasn't it? Culture and the importance of.
Yeah. So I was inspired a lot by Rebecca from the Fountain Partnership. She spoke for us at one of our multi-channel meetups, pharma multi-channel meetups, about culture and how to maintain it in a remote environment. And I was just so impressed by her depth of knowledge around that and the passion for it.
She's really brilliant at that stuff.
I hadn't really considered it before, because like you said, we waxed and waned, we grew and we shrank, and I don't think we knew who we were. But Paul, my CTO, who joined with me 7 years ago as a junior developer and is now our CTO, I think he and I live those values, and it sort of bleeds into the company, or that's probably the wrong phrase, but it's written through the company. But I did recognize that as we were growing so fast, I didn't want those values that we lived to disappear, but also we can't work too hard here. I don't know if that sounds pat, but we're growing so fast and the team are so passionate. I kind of just wanted to establish like the foundations for growth, like getting really good finance in place.
I agree. Incredibly important, given the size you were and the scale of growth you've had this year and what looks like next year as well. Yeah,
and culture is one of those things, right? So being open and honest and transparent, and that's been really hard remotely. It has been. I mean, up until our first company strategy day, when the hell was that? Where are we? Sometime in August. I hadn't met more than half of the people who work for me in a face-to-face setting, and there's still two I haven't met because they couldn't make it up. So it's been difficult, and I don't think we've got it right. I don't think we're there yet. We're really conscious of it. We try, but it is really hard remote. I'm really looking forward to getting people back, but I can't now. They're all spread around the country. It's going to be company days and planned events. So I'm always open to talk to people who really feel they're making progress on the remote culture bit.
I think you're right to recognise that it's not the finished article. Culture is always evolving. There's always things you can do to improve it. But what do you think the most important thing is that you've done in the last 18 months to really, glue all those people together?
So the strategy day it obviously stands out because it's the first time we're all together. So the two people that couldn't make it were on were sort of heads on monitors around the room, and we had the windows open, plenty of space, etc. And everyone was tested and all that kind of stuff. But it was really nice for people to be in the room. Like some people were taller than we thought they were because you've only seen them, this high up, and some people were shorter. Teresa came along. And we had a company come and do motivational mapping. I mentioned that earlier. Yeah. And the motivational mapping is all about understanding what brings she said a really, really interesting thing, the trainer, that motivation is energy, right? So when you feel your energy come up, you're motivated. And when you feel it drain, you're demotivated. So this exercise was to understand what got people's energy up, and not as a team, although we did look at the team scores, but as individuals, and can we facilitate an environment and projects and a structure that that means they get their energy stays high. I don't know how else to express it. And then so you get your individual maps done, and you've got these archetypes that come out of it. And then we've shared all of those in a shared folder with the idea that for those that are comfortable doing this, a couple of people didn't, is that people can look at your motivational map and understand how you tick and what you like and all the rest of it. And then, it's a bit like a owner's manual, right? It'll help you know what makes them tick. And Nick, as the head of ops, is the direct opposite of me. Literally, if you took the bar charts of the things and you flip them over, it makes a perfect rectangle, which is great because, we have the different way of looking at things, different things drive us. So that really helped. And it felt like we were trying to demonstrate that we're investing in individuals. A culture is a company-wide thing, but I think it's made up of individuals, obviously. But to try and show that that we're interested in individuals and in what their opportunities are.
Yeah, I think that's super important.
You guys really helped for that strategy day when we talked about hitting our first million, and it was
it wasn't a leading question because I know that we had involvement in it, but I think it's something that comes up time and time again. And Spencer and I have worked with a new client this week, and to be fair to the client, I mean, if he's listening now, he'll maybe pick up some of the feedback from the day we did. But the exercise had gone through to create a strategy document was brilliant, but I think we felt they hadn't gone deep enough and far enough in sharing that with the team. And, what was in that for the team? Why are we going on the journey that we're going on? What does that mean for everybody in the business? Sometimes these things get lost. So the more you can include the team in those strategy days, the better. And I know that we, in our meetings, you probably won't mind me saying, we kind of agonized over the content a little bit and procrastinated on various points. But I think we got to a place where, what was shared was probably, a very open and honest assessment of where you wanted to take the business and why you wanted to do it. And knowing what I do, it wasn't all about pound notes.
No, but it's an important point as an owner, right? It's very easy to see why it's important to hit 1 million or why you want to hit 1 million or 5 million in 5 years, whatever your plan might be. It's very obvious if you own all or part of a company, why that's beneficial. It's not so obvious to your team. What does hitting 1 million mean for me? Why do I care? I'm just making money for someone else, right? And I always got stuck on that. And actually, it was Nick who said, "Look, next time we talk about this, you need to think about what that means." And I took that to you guys and said, "What does it mean? What does it mean to people? Because you've taken companies through the 1 million, through the 5 million mark, your own company and others, lots of others, and it was, if I can remember rightly, the things we came up with was opportunity for a start, speed growing. Every 1 million you hit, there's your R&D, your new products, that kind of the excitement that comes with that. Salaries, you can pay more. You can pay more. Then there's the new technology, which of course drives developers. If you're profitable and you're growing, you can invest in that technology, both from a product and infrastructure point of view. And then there's the interesting work that comes in from clients. The bigger you are, the more attractive you are. Those projects you really want, you can get. And we're getting to that stage now where we're picking up these really interesting selling effectiveness dashboards that were the domain of the big guys, Accenture and Indegene and people like that. And we're now just starting to pick those up. And those are really, really interesting and challenging for the devs.
Yeah, no, that's really strong. I mean, I think that I couldn't agree more with everything you've said there. Just kind of moving on, sticking with culture, but moving on a little bit. I think when we had our sort of pre-show discussion, I know you wanted to cover off some of the mental health aspects of it's been a difficult year and a half. You've had to grow the team and manage culture, and I know that's a subject that's really close to your heart. Have there been any instances that you've had to deal with, and how have you dealt with that? I know a lot of agency owners are in the same boat at the moment, maybe with mental health challenges themselves or with their team. Do you have any words of wisdom for them?
Words of wisdom: talk and listen. Talk if you're, reach out if you're suffering. So I went through my own depression, difficult patch, whatever label you want to give it. So at the time, I was struggling with 28B. I had a house that I'd stretched on, and it was the credit, the housing market dipped. and we were halfway through a renovation, which I should say I was also trying to do myself with the help of builders, and we were living there. Stupid idea. If you're going to renovate a house, rent somewhere else. Instead of 3 months intensive work, it was 3 years, and the builders spent more time cleaning up for the kids getting home than they did doing the work. But I would then put on my builder's clothes in the evening, do what I could in between. The kids were going to secondary school. That was very stressful. There was other issues within the family, and 28B was struggling. And I broke. I broke quite badly, actually. Ended up on SSRIs. I got some help, and for 6 months they just helped me. Kind of.
Were there signs early on? Did you?
Probably to others.
Did it sort of hit you quite suddenly, or did you recognize in yourself there were things like now? Do you have an early warning system? Like if you sense those things happening again, you'd recognize them early or not? I mean, I always hear different stories about this, but I'd love to know from yourself.
So I would say it's difficult because it happened once and it was intense and it was a short. So I've got like depression, clinical depression. They say is 1 in 10. It affects 9 out of 10 people. We all know people with it. We've suffered it ourselves, etc. Mine was a very intense, short period. So I'm not sure I would know because it was like it was a one-off and intense. But what it led me to do when the help I got and the medication I was on for that period of time really helped me reset, and I realized, why am I trying to do this with a house? What with the business? And actually, it's around the same time that the whole 2017 October thing. So it was a hell of a time. But we sold that house, even though we should have really hung on. But we sold that house, downsized, got rid of some debt, focused on the business, niched, got my nerve on being an expert, and now it's a very different environment. I would recognize what not to do rather than the early warning signs. Right, I'm not going to put myself under that much pressure with that much distraction and too many things pulling you apart. But so I'm very conscious.
James, I really like that. I mean, I think Pete and I see this a lot where sometimes it's just okay. It's okay to take a step back. You know, it's okay not to always push into the carnage and the chaos. It's like, it's okay to take a step back. And ultimately, whenever we see anyone taking sometimes a step back from when things are overwhelmed or seem to be, that actually when they do take a step back, don't they, Pete? They always end up coming back, taking 2 steps forward. And you know, that saying 1 step back, 2 steps forward, it really is. In fact, one day we should have a whole session just on the phrases that people say, because actually so many of them do apply to our everyday life in business. But I love that you did that, and now look at the business now springing back and
focusing and like what's important. So I was trying to describe this today is well, I'll come back to it, but it's like how not the depression, not talking about mental health, but when you're an agency owner, you've got like a head full of bees, right? There's just so many things you've got to focus on. Like
there's a great place.
Working with you guys and having a good team around you is like they can bat a few of the bees away, and it's like which is the most important, right? And maybe that's just me that's got a head full of bees, but you know, there's so much to think about and there's so much to be pulled in different directions on, and add into that like stupid stresses like I was putting myself under that I didn't need to. So what I'm saying from that is mental health is a real passion of mine, because I used to sell. I was in the industry. I was selling, funny enough, Prozac. I didn't take Prozac when I got ill. I took sertraline, but you know, I was selling antidepressants, schizophrenia medicines, atypical antipsychotics. So it's really passionate of mine. And then I was really worried going remote. So you asked, had there been an incident, or has there been an occasion?
This again, not a leading question, but the reason I asked it is because you have gone remote and you have got a great culture, and there probably have been things. And because of to say this succinctly, I think you do give a shit about your people. You know, I was interested to know, you know, for the benefit of anybody listening, how you managed to handle it. So
before we went remote, I noticed one of the guys in the office just not being that happy. You know, you can just pick it up, right? Just not as chipper as he was. And occasionally just sadder than you'd expect he normally to be. And at the time, my wife was working here on the finance side, and she's also very sensitive to this area. So we had a chat, and we thought maybe we should. And she took him to one side and just asked, and he was not in a good place. And we got him some help, etc. And he, it helped, right? I can't say any more about it than it helped.
No, it's right.
How do you spot that in a 30-minute Zoom call twice a week? How do you see that? And so when we did go remote, it really worried me. You can't, both from taking a temperature of your team, and you can use office vibe and all that kind of stuff, but it's not the same as the non-verbal cues you get from being with someone in an office. So I'm very conscious of that. We're definitely going to be a blended, if not pretty much fully working from home model. It's not fully remote, that's the wrong phrase. It's working from home mostly. How do we do that? So the reason I was just getting slightly distracted, I'm trying to look at my calendar for the name of the guy that a friend of mine or a colleague of mine recommended to come in and do some talks on mental health. I really wish I could remember his name. Can we get this out to people afterwards? I'd really love to recommend
it. You can get it in the show notes.
Yeah. So he was a director at Bristol Myers Squibb, Big Cheese at Bristol Myers Squibb, and was a real mental health advocate there for various reasons. Struggled with his own depression, which he's very open about, by the way. That's not me giving away any secrets. But he's left the industry, took advantage of a redundancy, and has started his own consultancy about helping big business be better about mental health. And I thought, I know we're not a big business, but I'd really like him to come in and do some talk and maybe be there for the team. Yeah. So a series of 3 talks for us, which first one is on what is good mental health. What's mental health? Because remember, mental health is like good health, right? It's mental illness. It's very different to mental health. And you think you look after your health, you should look after your mental health. So that was the first talk. Then we did talk on how to be there for people and listening and being there in the moment, how to pick up on cues, etc. And the last talk was the impact of remote. What are we missing? The human interaction, the breaks in the day. So how do you replace it? Like go for a walk before you start in the morning, go for a walk when you finish in the evening. Make sure you are seeing friends. You're not finishing work, especially for our devs, finishing work in front of the computer and then just switching it over to something else. Take a break, all the rest of it. So it's only a start, though. I don't think it's enough, just 3 talks and then it goes. So we're looking to get a mental health first aider trained up and then just make it a part of what we do. We have every 3rd Thursday from this point forward, we're having a spare slot in our day that is going to be for cultural topics, cultural calendar months, and mental health discussions and wellness. And it still worries me. It still worries me.
Yeah, I mean, however, happy people's lives are on the whole, or how the economy's going, or whether it's winter or summer, there's always going to be someone who's having challenges. And as you rightly say, it's hard to talk about these things. So encourage, trying to spot signs and encouraging people to talk is probably the most important factor. And I'm glad you touched on. I guess you were sort of talking about office vibe and stuff like that, which I think is really important. But you're kind of saying, look, you need to go one further here. We can't get this from, clicking boxes each month. So,
I think the thing I'd most like to encourage within the team and everyone is to learn how to listen. Yeah. So when you're having a conversation with someone, I mean, this is a different environment, right? It's an interview and stuff like that. And sometimes, I can just carry it. But when someone's opening up and all the rest of it, there's just, key phrases. He said, looking to, here you go. I've even got on my wall notes from that session. And it's things like, thank you for opening up to me. It must be difficult for you. I'm here to listen to you. How can I help you move forward? And how can we support you as a team? So you've got some freight, but it's mostly listening and not waiting to jump in with a solution or waiting to jump in with your own story. And I've got that particular problem. I've always got an experience or a story that I want to share. And I've learned to maybe just hold back on that and let people talk.
Yeah, I think it's important that you have shared your story, because that obviously makes other people around you more comfortable to share theirs, I guess, as well. Yeah. So,
well, in my personal life, that has been a really interesting experience. So, because I've worked in the space for so long, and actually we used to run destigmatization campaigns, taking the stigma away from depression. So when I was well after that period of time, I chose to proactively talk to my friends about it, and almost to a person, they had their own story to put back. It wasn't always about them, but it would be about a mother, a father, a husband or a wife or even children, and our relationships are stronger from that, right? I have experience and knowledge to share, as they did to me, that can be really, really help. And there is no stigma. There should be no stigma. It's just an illness.
Yeah, totally agree. And in terms of, sticking with the team subject for a moment, what's motivating your team right now? What's going on in the business that's keeping them fired up?
It is the excitement of growth, right? For me, it's like a drug, right? It's really hard right now. I don't think I've ever worked so hard in my entire life. And that we meet once a month, and every month I say, "God damn, that was a hard month." And I say it was harder than last month.
Every month is the hardest. You've never
hardest month ever.
In your life.
Hardest month ever, and it genuinely, like, there is a point. And to speak to your question earlier, Spence, about recognizing the signs. It may not be the signs, it may be the situation. And I am genuinely thinking maybe it's just a bit much right now. But what's motivating the team? It's individuals, right? So we've got a fantastic developer here who is an ex-QA engineer, and she's bringing standards in. I always say that, right, up until recently, we just ran at things. We just get it done, and we'd run at stuff. And, the code was different here and it was different there. And we had freelancers doing it. And we were basically ignoring risks and we were ignoring efficiencies because we didn't have the time to put systems and processes in. So that particular developer, Sveta, I think at this point, very much motivated by bringing some standards in, bringing some stuff in. Paul, the CTO, motivated by new and innovative stuff. The fact that he's grown this amazing team around him that are incredibly collaborative. Everyone getting better every day through code reviews and retrospectives. Client services side of things, they're motivated by client success. So I think it's a really exciting time. So I don't think there's any one thing that's motivating everyone.
Yeah. I'm just always interested in it, because people talk about, what motivates teams, and I'm just thinking, well, your team, to be fair to them, sound like they're quite fired up at the moment, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't all of your rally cries on the strategy day. Must be other things as well. So
this is the thing. So the client services project management team, there's just three of us, and then Nick at head ops, right? So and we all kind of got little silos that we're working in, although we collaborate. But the development team, which is the biggest part of the company, honestly, the way that they've come together and the way that they work together, that they're their own. It's like a virtuous cycle, right? The more they collaborate, the more they work together, the better the code gets, the more inventive their work tools get. And I think that's their main motivation, which is also great because they've got growth of the company coming in, but they're their own little engine right now. And I don't mean to imply that they're that they're just an engine, but they're generating their own excitement, interest, creativity. And that's great because it's infectious for us as well.
Yeah, I really like that. What do you think the biggest challenge that the team have overcome in the last year is?
Me.
living true to the values, honesty.
Yeah, probably. Honestly, I think it's probably me, because I still want to run out. I still want to just get it done, and I'm chucking stuff at them. And this particular developer, I'm going to use the name Sveta, right? I was like, right, just here's the changes I want. I threw the changes over the wall. She said, we agreed they had to be set up as issues in Git, if that means anything to anyone listening. And I was like, hang on, and she's just like, no, because if you don't do it, or if the project team doesn't do it, I've got to do it. So do you want me developing? And it was just this nice, that we'd agreed a process, and she was just holding me back to do it. And then Nick on the ops side is like, James, this is what we decided to do, and you're over here. You guys are doing the same, keeping me in check and giving me something to do. Because, it's tempting as an agency owner that's also a kind of creative, is just to rush off and do things. That's still really important. Can't ignore that. But equally, it'll break the company if I continue to do that. And it goes against what the standards and quality and foundations we need to put in for growth.
We often describe the over enthusiastic agency founder as a meddler. Someone who likes to, perhaps be over here and then over there. Would you have described yourself as that person in the past, do you think? Or
no, I don't think I'm a meddler. I think I am a disruptor, and not always in a positive way. like I wouldn't know what actually no, I do occasionally dip into the code and change something and don't tell anyone because I need something done in speed. But and then it comes back to bite.
We also say that people who are meddlers, they never think they are meddlers, Pete.
Yeah, that's very true.
Positive Can I just say though, just an observation, James, though, is that you I mean, I love the fact that you have you have grown really quickly, as you say, in the past couple of years, and you've had to go from that owner manager who wears all the hats, who does everything, to one who has very diligently recruited someone and delegated, and slowly you've kind of unpacked everything you've done. And you're not completely there yet, but it has been really a pleasure to watch you build this team around you, who you speak so fondly of, which I love the way that you talk so passionately about your team. But I know Pete and I both seen you delegate away more and more. But the reality is you haven't really had a choice in the early days. You kind of had to do a bit of everything, right? But now, for anyone who's listening, who's in the earlier stages, who is doing a lot, it is one of the best reasons about growing is that you are able to bring in more people, right? So that you can start to do the things that you're more valuable doing. But it is important that you do let go, definitely, and don't end up, because we've seen so many big agency owners come back in and try and, I'm always fixing everything for the company, and and they can't empower their team to fix it. They've got to go back in and do it, and that always ends in tears. But you're not that person, I know, but it is one of our observations.
Yeah, no, it's your baby, right? It is difficult to let go, but then it's like when if your kids go to nursery and then they go to primary school, you let them go and other people take them on and make them better. But I still take out the bins on a Friday. There's still a lot of hats I wear, but what really, it has been the hardest thing for me is understanding the structure I need to grow the business. And like your pod structure, it took me a long time to get my head around it, but when it really clicked for me, and the reason we do it is, you said, like, okay, when you're an agency founder, you're the subject matter expert, you're also the project manager, and you're also doing client services, and then you got all the other hats on, sales, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And as soon as you said that, and as soon as I saw it, I did struggle with the subject matter expert a little bit because it was super niche and stuff. And at first I resisted the project manager, right? I said we didn't need one. And how wrong was I? It was almost like a higher power heard me say that and then struck me with so many problems that would have been solved by a project manager in the same month. That if you two could have been,
always looks after us in that regard.
Yeah, you two could have been wearing big hats with a flashing sign that said "I told you so" at our next meeting.
We never would.
No, never would. Well, Spencer might. So that pod structure really helped me see how, like, I can pass that on to someone who's better at it than me. I can pass that on that's better on me. And I think probably the hardest one is the subject matter expert, especially when it's super specific. And that is my current challenge. Like, I think, I think there's a lot of agency owners out there that know that the biggest challenge to the business is your own time. It's getting out of the business to be able to run the business. And I'm constantly pulled back in because of that knowledge. So it's the number one challenge. There's a shared number one challenge. It's giving Paul, who's our CTO, enough time to be a CTO and not do development on client projects. So his role is threefold. It's like represent the company out there with thought, leadership, and innovation. It's get the teams. It'd be responsible for our technology and workflows and tools. And then it's research, development, innovation within the company for new products. And at the moment, every time we're busy, you just get sucked into a project. And also when we recruit a new developer, that sucks his time up for onboarding and all the rest of it. And then I'm getting sucked into these, and yet we're the two most valuable assets within the organization. And yet we end up doing work that's not got that value. So that's our really big challenge. And I am struggling with how to do that.
Yeah, and just for people listening, because they may not understand when we talk about a subject matter expert, most people who are founders in agencies, most people they have a level of. Interestingly, when I interviewed Mark at JFDI, he calls them practitioners. It's an individual in the business who normally a founder who or a strategist who understands a lot about the services you deliver, and actually beyond maybe the people within the team. So someone who's more of a strategist or an expert in your core services. And often it's quite hard for a founder in the early years to whenever you do a pitch, the client goes, well, I want you to oversee everything because you know everything about this. And it's trying to find someone who almost, when you go into the pitch, is seen to know more than you. And therefore, as a founder, the client's not always choosing you and demanding you. And, once you get much bigger, you've got a team of people, much larger team, and it's always going to have that expertise much greater than you, people doing the work day in, day out. But when you're smaller, it's a transitional thing. And so finding that subject matter expert, as we call them, it could be depending on the type of agency you are, but someone who is able to, when you win a new piece of business, that client understands they have one point of contact who understands in more detail, than the owner, exactly how the strategy for their business should be.
I don't know if you're seeing any of the comments coming in here, James.
I'm going to say the same thing.
Where are they?
Angie Wiles, love your brutal honesty, James Harper. You're a standout expert in our industry, and you're clearly learning and sharing many lessons as you go.
Hey, Angie. Yeah, thank you. Hey,
comment from the boys at Jago as well.
Yeah,
good to have them on board. But just a point on that subject matter expert. If there are any ex-reps with a depth of Viva expertise that are out there, give me a bell. We can do something. Yeah, hit me up.
Yeah, they all listen to this show, James. We have a queue of them.
Loads. There's loads out there. But yeah.
All right, look, it's been really great to speak to you today. I've really enjoyed our chat, quite wide-ranging, as it always is when we speak. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Thank you again to Forecast. Thank you to Caitlin.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Spencer, and thank you, Caitlin.
Sorry for leaving the podcast at the beginning.
Yeah, that puts all a bit off, but that was great fun. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James.
Cheers. Bye-bye.